Before we define diversity, we need to know a little about cultural groups. A cultural group is made up of people who share something. That something might be a set of attitudes or experiences, or similar backgrounds or lifestyles. That something might be physical appearance, but not necessarily. Some cultural groups you may be familiar with include women, men, young adults, Caucasians, African Americans, fashionistas, Christians, Muslims, professionals, or even gamers. The list is infinite and ever-changing. Sharing something does not mean the people in a cultural group share everything. Members of a cultural group may be of different races, ethnic origins, or religions, different genders or orientations or backgrounds, different beliefs, preferences, or behaviors. So cultural groups are not made up of people who are all the same. They are people who share a certain similarity. What, then, is diversity?
All right, let's have a discussion about diversity, guys. Do you even know what it is? What is diversity?
When you have a group of people who are different mixed in together.
There's a lot of different categories that you could put people into.
So if I told you guys, okay, I want you to name every single way that people can be different, like different categories that people can be in. Yes. Beliefs. Religion, that's really good.
Economic status.
Economic status, that's a good one.
Their background.
Their background, so like their family background, like their cultural background, things like that.
The term diversity is often used to describe a specific setting, where you can find people from different cultural groups, such as a neighborhood, classroom, office, or city. So, a group that's rich with diversity has people from many different cultural groups. When we hear our city is diverse, it could mean there are people with an array of different ethnic backgrounds living there. Or it could mean that people of many different ages live there. Or even that people who like many different sports teams live there. If you hear that a place or group is diverse, you definitely need more information. To better understand the many types of diversity, we sometimes use categories of visible and invisible diversity. Visible diversity refers to differences that are easy to identify with our eyes. For instance, what age group do these people probably fall into? Looking at their physical characteristics, we're pretty sure they're toddlers. But some characteristics can't be accurately identified by sight. Those differences must be learned or experienced. We call that invisible diversity. Religion, language, and music choice are a few forms of invisible diversity. Can we tell from just looking at this person whether she's a French-speaking Christian who loves heavy metal, or if he's a Portuguese-speaking Buddhist hip-hopper? Another kind of diversity we categorize as invisible is what we call cultural norms. A cultural norm is a behavior pattern that's typical of a specific group. Think of cultural norms as the way we do things around here. Shaking someone's hand when you meet them, or kissing them on the cheek, or bowing, or hugging, or keeping your distance. Each action may be a cultural norm to a different group of people. If we can actually see two people hug, why is that invisible diversity? Well, do you know why they are hugging? They might be the oldest, dearest of friends. Or perhaps one initiated the greeting and the other just complied. Or perhaps their actions, hugging upon meeting, are part of a cultural norm where they live. To know more, you'd have to learn more than what you've just observed. That is invisible diversity. Let's review. A cultural group shares a set of attitudes, values, experiences, and sometimes even physical appearance. Diversity most commonly refers to differences between cultural groups within a specific setting. Differences that are understood with your eyes are visible diversity. Differences that must be learned or experienced are invisible diversity. Cultural norms, how we do things around here, are a type of invisible diversity. Now that you know what diversity is, let's explore some of the many types we see and can't see How many types of people are there in the world? How are they similar? And what are their differences? Earlier, we listed some types of diversity: race, origin, religion, sex, gender, and orientation, music preferences, attitudes, and beliefs. We could have also named intelligence, cultural values, and even age. There are nearly as many differences as there are people. Let's take the time to explore just a few of those differences. As we saw earlier, age is a common form of diversity. Babies, children, tweens, young adults, adults, mature adults. You see, meet, and know people from all these cultural groups. Each age group has its own special characteristics and needs. Do you respect people who belong to a different age group? Do they respect you? If a person values an aspect of another person's diversity, it means they respect it. They believe it has merit and worth, that it's useful and important. For example, a college student may hear a mature adult speak about navigating difficult experiences. If a student finds it useful to understand the strengths or strategies used to get through those experiences, they are showing respect for that mature adult. Conversely, a mature adult may value the knowledge some young people have about technologies that could make their daily lives easier. If so, they are showing respect for that younger person's knowledge. When we value diversity, everyone comes out ahead. Another form of diversity is called ethnicity. Ethnicity is defined as the characteristics of a large group of people who share common and distinctive cultural, religious, language, racial, or national heritage. When we talk about race, we might include African American, Caucasian, Asian Pacific Islander, Hispanic or Latino, and Native American, as well as many others. When we talk about national heritage, we are referring to people from every country on the globe. Our society includes hundreds of languages and dozens of religions. The combinations of these characteristics are endless, and thus, so is the number of ethnic groups. Ethnic backgrounds are a part of every person. So understanding them is the way we get to understand people, and then the world. Understanding people means getting to know how they think, what they've learned, how they perceive the world. If you have a problem to solve or an idea to explore, understanding people who are different from you can be crucial to your success, whether it's at school, in your career, or in your personal life. Let's examine another form of diversity: language. Language is a systematic means of communicating that's used and understood within a community. Hundreds of languages exist around the world. And even within one language, there can be diversity. Let's take a look at the use of the English language across the United States. An accent is the way a person pronounces the words in a particular language. Everyone, no matter where they are from, has an accent. You may hear people speak English with Northeastern or Midwestern accents, California or Southern accents, yet the language is the same. It's true in all languages and countries. There are many types of British or German accents, many types of Chinese accents. The value in learning another language and understanding accents is that you can connect with more people, here and across the world. A person has an accent from whichever cultural group they were raised in. So it bears repeating. Everyone has an accent. When it's time to start a career, familiarity with many languages can make you an even more marketable candidate. The last form of diversity we will explore is about personal preference. Personal preferences are as numerous as the number of people in the world. Diversity of personal preference can include fashion choice, music choice, and many other lifestyle and cultural options. Personal preferences may sound unimportant, but they can help define a culture. Take music choice, for example. Young people in particular tend to culturally express themselves through their music choices. The listeners to different music genres may wear a specific type of clothing, go to particular kinds of places to hear it, and have specific radio stations they listen to. What does your choice in music tell other people about who you are? Many assumptions can be made about what your music means and what it means to you. Some of those assumptions may be accurate. Many may not be. But to judge someone based on their music is actually a form of prejudice. We'll talk about that next. Let's review. There is an endless list of similarities and differences, or diversity, among people. Types of diversity include age, ethnicity, language, religion, accents, and personal preferences like music choice. Ethnicity refers to the characteristics of a large group of people who share common and distinctive racial, national, religious, linguistic, or cultural heritage. If a person values an aspect of another person's diversity, it means they respect it. They believe it has merit and worth. It's useful and important. Like all other preferences, music choice may communicate something about the person who listens to it, but it may not communicate as much as you expect. The value of learning about the diversities of other people is that you learn about how the world really works. It's a skill in high demand in today's job market. Let's explore a few important words you should have in your diversity vocabulary: stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination. A stereotype is a commonly held public belief about specific groups of people. That belief is an oversimplified idea, image, or opinion. They are generalizations about the typical characteristics of members of the groups. Akira looks or sounds a certain way. She probably has characteristics XYZ. Joseph has a certain last name. He probably has characteristics ABC. Everyone stereotypes other people. But why? One theory is that it is an easy way to mentally organize large blocks of information. After all, it can be difficult to take in all of the complexities of other people as individuals. Stereotyping can be a useful function. It helps us to simplify, predict, and organize our world. Here's the problem. Once we've sorted and organized everyone into tidy categories, we tend to avoid processing new or unexpected information about each individual. And that's when stereotyping becomes a negative reaction. When we stereotype, we usually don't respond to people accurately. We're responding to generalizations and assumptions about a cultural group instead of responding to the actual person in front of us. Remember, people in a cultural group share some similarities, but they are not the same. There are many common stereotypes about females and males, that females like shoes and males like sports, for instance. We have stereotypes for teens and adults, for Asians and white people, but how many of them are really valid for any individual? Here's the downward spiral. Stereotyping often leads to prejudice, and prejudice can lead to discrimination. Prejudice is an unreasonable, often hostile opinion or attitude, usually toward a racial, religious, or national group. Prejudice is often formed without much knowledge of the group. The feeling is also usually based on the fear of the unknown. Think of prejudice as judging a book by its cover. It means you decide how to feel about someone based on what you assume to know about the person, based on a title or a label, not based on the actual person.
Have you ever embarrassed yourself by thinking someone was one ethnicity and then once you got to know them, they weren't?
I used to really think Xavier was Hispanic until I came up to him and asked him, I'm like, man, are you African American? He was like, yeah.
So did you appreciate that he asked instead of
instead of giving me a stereotype, he could have just said, oh yeah, he's Mexican, he's this and that. Instead, he actually came to me with a polite question and asked if I was African American. I agreed.
I love the word he used. He said polite, okay? He was considerate with his curiosity.
Stereotyping is generalizing information. Prejudice is forming an attitude based on that generalization. Discrimination is the action you take. Discrimination is usually based on prejudice. Discrimination refers to the treatment of people based on class or category rather than individual merit. Discrimination isn't just baseless, and it isn't just ignorant. It's often illegal. Some types of discrimination you may have heard of are racism, ageism, and sexism. That is treating someone differently just because of their race, their age, or whether they are male or female. Many types of discrimination are even outlawed in the U.S. Constitution. But legalities aside, it's widely recognized how much diversity has to offer those who value it. Let's review. A stereotype is an oversimplified idea or generalization about the typical characteristics of members of a group. Stereotyping can lead to prejudice, which is an unreasonable and often hostile attitude towards a group of people. Discrimination is treating someone differently based on those prejudices. Many kinds of discrimination, such as racism, ageism, or sexism, are not just ignorant, they're illegal. Now it's time for an experiment. Today, your cultural awareness professor has an experiment planned. You must complete a survey by finding people in the room with the qualities listed on the worksheet. What would be the best way to get the information you need? The first person you have to find is someone with Hispanic or Latino background. Since you don't know anyone yet, you rely on your instincts. You decide your best chance of being right is with Michael. Why talk to him before you write his name on your sheet? That would just be awkward. You know a couple of Hispanic people, and they kind of look like Michael. Of course, you don't know anything about Michael, including whether or not he is Hispanic. All you did was stereotype him according to his appearance. Not a great start. Who's next? A person who loves country music. So again, instead of communicating with anyone, you look for clues. You notice a girl, she's Caucasian, has pigtails, and she's even wearing cowboy boots. She must love country music. Most white girls do. And look at those boots. You also decide as you write down Julie's name that you probably won't like her, 'cause you hate country music. You just acted with prejudice. You decided not to like someone because of where you think she's from and her possible cultural background. Communication was halted, and new connections will not be formed. In fact, despite this getting to know you experiment, you still don't know anything about the people in your class. Looking at the next question on your list, you make your way to a girl across the room. Something about her seems interesting, and so you're curious. Your desire to learn about her could be expressed positively or negatively, depending on the degree of sensitivity you use. Responding sensitively means being perceptive, even cautious, about the feelings of the person you're communicating with. When responding to diversity with curiosity, use sensitivity and you're less likely to offend the other person. You approach the girl and say,
Hi, will you sign my sheet for likes hip-hop?
Why do you think I like hip-hop?
You're African-American.
So just because I'm African-American, that means I like hip-hop?
Yes?
No, I don't like hip-hop.
okay, so that definitely was not a demonstration of sensitivity in action. You just used what might be called crass curiosity. Crass curiosity is when you express a desire to know more about someone without considering how they might feel about your question. Not sure why your question might be offensive? Well, you didn't ask what kind of music she likes. You assumed she must like something because of her race. You stereotyped. Does everyone of your race like the same music, food, clothes, cars, movies? So how else can you ask your question? Try considerate curiosity, the kind that uses sensitivity. It's a better social icebreaker. For example, instead of focusing on differences, you could focus on mutual situations. Most people like some kind of music. So instead of thinking, you're African American and I'm not, we must like different music, you could simply ask, so what kind of music do you like? If you ask questions with consideration and sensitivity, you will probably relax the person you are talking to, and they might be more willing to share. Now, let's explore the most positive way to approach our experiment, with an open mind. The open-minded approach is a process of learning about other people as individuals. That means more than asking the right questions. It means being open to the answers, really listening and thinking about what you hear. It means that if you don't understand or agree with something, you're open to hearing the person out before you comment. Learning to be open to others' differences may take some time to develop, because we naturally want to react to something we don't understand. When your aim is to value diversity, however, you focus that reaction on listening and learning. Your goal is to be open to new perspectives and to avoid interrupting or correcting others, and to be an empathetic listener. An empathetic listener is not defensive. When you are an empathetic listener, you focus on understanding the thoughts of others instead of getting others to understand you. An empathetic listener is not interested in receiving agreement or change from others, but wants to genuinely understand other points of view. Empathetic listening is an invaluable skill. It is the best way to make sure you understand and benefit from someone's differences. Where did you go to school last? What kind of music do you like? Where did you get your boots? Did you grow up around here? Taking time to really listen to the answers might make the difference between making new friends or not. Later in life, you will have the skills to network with colleagues and employers. Networking takes people skills, and people skills are the #1 way to get and keep the job you want. The final step to the open-minded process is to have patience with yourself and the person you are talking to. You may not understand your differences right away, but with time you will learn the value in them. Take the time to really communicate and get to know and respect someone new. There are so many benefits to becoming skilled at this process of responding to diversity in your surroundings. You'll build a wide circle of friends and acquaintances to rely on. You'll be able to elicit a positive reaction from almost anyone you talk to. You'll become a more well-rounded person, meaning you'll know a lot more about a lot more things. You'll find success in talking to people your age, to people older and younger, to teachers and coworkers and potential employers. Almost every company and every job has some global element to it. Companies are looking for people who can connect with everyone. People who can make judgments based on the facts, not prejudices. People who know something about the world beyond their backyard. People who can lead others to do the same. When you value diversity, you don't necessarily believe what others have told you about someone's differences. You keep an open mind and make a decision for yourself. Eventually, you'll lead others to also be open-minded by example. Maybe if you had used the open-minded approach to your experiment, you wouldn't have gotten your first 2 answers wrong. Let's review. When we meet people from different backgrounds or demographics than our own, we sometimes experience curiosity about our differences. Be sensitive if you have questions. Avoid crass curiosity. Think how a person might feel about your questions before you ask them. Considering the feelings of others is a major part of using considerate curiosity. Considerate curiosity also means being open-minded to the answers you receive. and really listening and considering what you hear. Be an empathetic listener and focus on genuinely understanding other people's point of view. Don't let stereotypes and prejudice affect your attitudes toward individuals. At the end of the experiment, you found out that Julie hates country music. She's a hip-hop DJ. Michael's not Hispanic. His parents are Italian, and he's from Idaho. And that last girl, she's really funny. You're going with her to a party at a friend's house this weekend. By valuing the diversity of others, you could have made 2 more friends. But wait, it's not too late. All it takes is an introduction, some consideration, and an open mind.